Hi, welcome to the Career Startups Podcast. My name is Daniel Lay, and I'm your host. We're doing something new on this episode today and going completely video. I did a webcast with Meighan Newhouse, who is the Chief People Officer of Inspirant Group. I've actually been working with this company for the past 2 months, and we've talked about all sorts of things from culture to building a company and what it takes to be an independent consultant. So if that's something that you're interested in, this episode is for you. We talked about the fears, concerns, what it takes to take that leap, and also some specific tactical steps of how to become an independent consultant. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoy the episode. Okay. Well, Meighan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so to just give some context, I know on my podcast, I've actually interviewed Amir, and he's been a mentor of mine for years. And when I first started management consulting, and when he was telling me about Inspirant Group, he definitely said you have to meet Meighan, and it's someone that you need to get in touch with. I think you'll fall in love with the company after you talk to her. And I would say in the past 3 months, definitely, getting to know you and the company a little more. He was definitely right, and that's why I wanted you on the show. I wanted to talk about
Thank you.
what you do and just get more just information on who you are and why you do what you do. So again, welcome
That's great.
to the show.
Thanks. Too kind. I appreciate it.
So yeah, let's start with what you do with Inspirant. Like, what's your title? Why? What kind of made that role happen, and kind of your background of getting there?
Yeah. So I have 3 titles at Inspirant, and so on any given day, I am wearing at least 3 different hats. Which for me and my personality, that's exactly where I want to be. I love having different things to do every day. My newest joke is that every half hour is something different right now, and my head's kind of on a swivel. What's happening? So, can I give you the background of how I
Absolutely,
came to Inspirant? All right.
Go for it.
So you mentioned Amir. Amir is actually a good friend of mine, and we know each other originally through our spouses. So my husband, Chad, is my high school sweetheart. We've been together 26 years. And when he was at college, he went to Illinois Wesleyan. We went to different colleges. And when he was there, he met this wonderful person. Her name is Layla, and she is just an amazing human being. And at first, I was honestly a little worried. I was like, uh-oh. she's beautiful and kind and funny and smart. I'm in trouble. But turns out they were just friends, which is, lucky me. And she had started dating this guy named Amir. And so we got to know each other in college. And then afterwards, we just stayed close. We liked each other. We became friends. And our lives kind of took similar paths family-wise. We had kids around the same time. And so we got together with the kids. But also Amir and I started to connect on a professional level. So I had been working for a law firm, and I would say I kind of grew up there. I was an instructional designer, so I developed internal training programs for custom technology that they had, or like a good example is they've moved from Lotus Notes to Outlook, and so I got to create the training program for them. Yeah, right? They were on Notes for a long time.
Oh, wow.
And we developed all these cool training programs for the attorneys and for their assistants and for the staff. And after a while, I felt like I had kind of reached my limit there. I was in my, mid to late 20s, and I was kind of like, now what? Mm-hmm. And I started talking to Amir at that time. And I know that he had been at Deloitte, and then he had gone out and joined a startup after that. And so I was interested in his journey, and he told me about working for Deloitte, and I had already started talking with them. And so I was fortunate. I did get hired for Deloitte, and about 3 weeks in, I was like, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. Not to say anything bad about Deloitte. Deloitte is a fantastic company. I think that they are doing everything right. I really do. I think that they are a world leader in thought leadership and in trying to do good. And I really enjoyed working for them. It just wasn't conducive to my lifestyle at the time. I had 2 little kids. I had recently moved, and I had gone from working on average 30-some hours a week to working on average 80-some hours a week. And it was challenging. It was, right? And not to say I don't like the work, but that was a huge change, especially with my 2-year-old and 4-year-old at home. And also I'd moved from working in an office to being 100% virtual, which
interesting.
Seems awesome, right? Like everyone's, oh, wow, how cool. Yeah. but I had no prep for that, so I'd gone from being, this naturally kind of social person working in an office setting my entire career to now working remotely and virtually. And I never met my boss. She worked out of her basement in Columbus, Ohio, and another team member was in Michigan, and there's another team member that lived down the street, but we never got together. We never saw each other face to face. So it was strange. I felt very isolated, and I didn't have a really great onboarding, and so I was just kind of thrust into it, and it didn't work. So I loved what I learned. It was a great 10 months, but while I was there, I was kind of the middleman between the subject matter experts and the people developing the training. Mm-hmm. And that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be that project manager person that that role I'd been put into. I really wanted to be developing the training and working with the SMEs as I had been doing. That's where I felt like my passion really was. So I started looking into who are these vendors creating all this training and all this learning. And I realized they were, learning consultancies, and they had these contractors working for them, developing these programs. I was like, well, that's interesting. That's cool. So I started looking into that. And at that time I went back and started talking to Amir, and he was awesome. He gave me some great advice about going out on my own and, moving into being kind of a sole proprietorship, and introduced me to some people. So again, that was another point where, we had always had this friendship, but this kind of career passion had started to intersect a little bit. We started, understanding that we saw eye to eye on a lot of things, and had a lot of the same vision for what we wanted to do. So, so after 10 glorious months at Deloitte,
that could seem like a lot.
It did. And it was, like I said, I hope my story doesn't come across as anything but, that I just wasn't ready for the big leagues, I think. My husband joked that I was going from JV to varsity, and I was like, what are you talking about? And it was true. I don't think I was properly prepared, and I think it was a great learning experience, and I still go back to that. And so I left after 10 months and went out on my own. And that was in November of 2012. I started my own single shingle called Colette Allen Consulting, and loved it. It was, and here's the thing, I didn't stop working 80 hours a week, but it was different because it was projects I was choosing. It was, clients I was choosing, right? So it felt different.
Yep. And we'll get into that.
So I can't wait. So it was, I loved it, and it was a struggle, right? I mean, I did not have a client for the first few months, and my sweet husband would come home every day and be like, what'd you do today? I was like, hey, I had all these calls. I met with these people. I'm sending these things, but it is a little stressful, being an income that we were relying on. But after about 3 months, they all started to come through at once, which was great. So that's when I started working those 90-hour weeks.
Yeah,
I didn't know how to say no at the time. I wanted all the work. So I did that for a while. And what was really cool about this, so about 3 years into it, Amir, my friend, actually brought me on as a vendor at HCFU, which is where he was at the time. And so he was in the tech innovation group, and they had a new technology that they needed to do some training on. And he's like, I've been waiting for the opportunity to bring you in, and here it is, And so that was awesome. So I got to work with Amir. I worked with Chris Goodman, who is also on our team now, but he was on Amir's team internally at the time. So he was my SME, but it was great. We had a really great time. We put together these programs. And about a year or two after that, so it was about 4 years into having my own business, I started thinking, like, what's next? I was getting a little bit of a bug, and I named my company Colette Allen and not like Meighan Newhouse LLC, because I always wanted to be something bigger than just me. I wanted to have a company, and I really wanted to have an organization where people enjoyed coming to work. Because I felt like in much of my career, and even growing up, I had a single mom, and watching her have to work, right, to support her 2 kids. It was not something she looked forward to every day. And I saw this over and over again. People, friends of mine, colleagues dreading work and really not wanting to get up and go in the morning, and having the Sunday scaries and all that. And I didn't get it, and I didn't like it. And I wanted to create a place where people didn't have those feelings, where people actually got up and they were excited about the work they were doing and the people they were working with. And so I had started thinking about that on my own. And I knew I needed a business partner in order to make that happen. And I kept telling my husband, Chad, that I was like, I need to find the right business partner to take this to the next level. And so around this time I was thinking about that. And then I started going to some of these startup events because I loved the startup feeling and atmosphere. And, I was like, gosh, it'd be so cool to like, do like the culture at one of these startups. I was literally thinking all of this.
Yeah.
And that was all in the summer of 2016. And so I had my business, it was going on 4 years. And then Amir and I had lunch, and I showed you that booth that we had lunch in that cafeteria when we had lunch last week. Mm-hmm. And I thought Amir was going to tell me about more work, like coming in for 2017. He was one of my clients. So we were having lunch, we were friends. He was telling me, thought he was going to tell me about more work coming. And he's like, so I'm leaving at the end of this year, and I'm going to start my own consulting firm. And Daniel, I remember the feeling I had. It was like elation almost. I don't know how to explain it. Like I had this like bubbly feeling, and it was before he had even said he wanted me to be involved. Like I had this I had a physical reaction of excitement, and I was really excited for my friend, but I think somewhere in the back of my head I was like, how could I get in on this?
Little did you know.
Well, honestly, the next sentence out of his mouth is, and I want you to come with me. And so I was like, what does that mean? And so he said he wanted me to run his people practice. He wanted me to be in charge of his people, build the culture, all the things I've been thinking and hoping and wanting to do came out of his mouth. And I was like, come on, like this isn't happening. It was really literally too good to be true. So he said all that, and I sent him, we have the text thread. I sent him probably 15 texts that afternoon with all of these ideas that I had. And so it's a long way of getting to where my titles are. So Amir had asked me, that was the original question, if you remember, 3 hours ago, but Amir had asked me to be what we ended up calling Chief People Officer. So something I really value about Amir is that he understands the importance of having your human resource function as part of the C-suite. If you really want to have a successful culture, if you really want to have that culture, I was just talking about the people where people want to come to work, feel valued, are doing work that they want to be doing, you need to have someone at the executive team that's looking out for everybody else as a whole, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then as part of like the work I had been doing, which was all learning and development, so then that came in. That's another hat that I wear then. So I'm the head of our learning and development practice. Mm-hmm. So client facing, I get to help out with any sort of learning solutions that our clients need. So a lot of it is focused obviously in our digital transformation space. So as Inspirant comes in and provides digital transformations for our clients, there's often change management and learning that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. And what I love about working for Inspirant as well is we see the value of providing that upfront. We think that's something you need to think about as part of the planning for the project and not as an afterthought after you've implemented or as you're getting close to implementation. Like, oh yeah, how are we going to tell people how to use this, right?
Yeah, I've seen that too many times.
Oh my gosh, haven't we all? I know.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but also what we do, which, I get a lot of joy out of, is we still have continued some of the work I was doing with Colette Allen is leadership development, management development training. And so we still are able to provide those resources to our clients as well, which really creates, I think, a very wholesome experience for our clients in that not only can we help them learn any sort of new technology or new process that may be being implemented, but we also can really focus on the whole person. So what does that mean for them as a manager, as a leader, as a member of the team, and how can they help affect that change efficiently?
Gotcha. So
my last title, my third title.
That's right. You got 3 titles. All right, keep going.
I know. I got one more. Well, lucky me, I am a partner at the company. So I'm an equity owner of Inspirant Group. And I take a lot of pride in that because I've always felt that it was my company. So Amir sat with me at that lunch in October of 2016 and asked me to join him. It's always been my company with him and with Chris V, who's our third partner. But the beginning of this year in January, Chris and I officially became equity partners. So I take great pride in being a part owner as well.
Very cool. So that could quickly add up to 90 hours of work a week, I'm sure.
But I love it. And it doesn't feel like work. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
When it's like, I can't wait to get to it, right? And it's hard to shut it off because I enjoy so much of it.
Absolutely, because I think it's, part of like a pride thing. Like you're building something, with people that you really respect and then, you get along with, but as well as you're actually not just doing like building a company, but you're also, delivering to clients on something that you're actually passionate about as well. So that's a good fit.
That's exactly right. You got it.
So let's dive into this chief people officer thing, because I know. So when I was starting out in my first job out of college, I remember my boss telling me about what this whole HR thing is, and he goes, HR exists only to make sure that we don't get sued. And that was my introduction to what, people development and HR and all that kind of stuff was. So you can see kind of, where it's been. And I've seen, different cultures that come out of that type of mentality.
Yeah.
And I think I think the culture is changing, especially on the corporate side, about what people actually mean to a company and how you should develop them. But I'm really interested in your thoughts on that, because I know you take culture very, very seriously. And everything about how a company functions, I think, is rooted out of that culture. So for you, and being the chief people officer, how would you, I guess, define the culture at Inspirant, and then talk about what are the different, things that you do to help guide that in the company?
It's a great question. So back to HR preventing us from getting sued. I fear that I might be the reason we do get sued. we have a joke. So like there's things that I say or do, and we have a joke like hashtag new to HR, because I'm like, it's a fact.
This podcast, like, we might need to edit a few things.
Totally.
It's all good. We'll have like one internal podcast and then one like, outside facing podcast.
You can have the outtakes to show the team. Yeah. So the question was what?
Yeah. Well, just talk about the culture at Inspirant Group, and then, I talk about what you're doing to guide it, any levers that you're pulling. I know you've talked a lot about like how you hire too. So, anything you want to go on for culture.
Okay. Yeah. So what we did a big exercise with the leadership team to define our core values. And I really think that those are like the centerpiece of our culture. And there was a long time that I was saying, the people that we've hired that we call unconsultants, our unconsultant team, we all have this like special sauce. And there's an example of new to HR. Like that's probably not something I should, like, what's the right term to use for this? And Len, our marketing guru, really helped me be like, it's because we have the same shared core values. I'm like, oh yes, okay, it all comes together, right?
Thanks.
But going through the leadership team, there's the 5 of us, and we, even looking at the partnership with me, Amir, and Chris V, we have diverse thought, right? Like we're kind to each other, we're respectful, but we do think about things, we approach things differently, we think about things differently, which I value very much. But to have this meeting where we came up with our core values between the 5 of us, and it always came back to people, and to see that come, and we said it in different ways, right? We went through these exercises, and it was, but what it came out of it was every single one of us wanted to do right by people, whether it's our internal folks or it's our clients, or what we say is the community at large, right? Those are everyone's people. So from that then came our 3 core values, which are have integrity, care about the greater good, and get it done. So anyway, sorry for the distraction. My dog's like, what's happening? There you go.
Nice. Okay, Chester. We got an audience.
Oh, we got Chester. What do you think? Okay. So defining those core values made me realize then that is what I see in our unconsultants, right? So I think it's something nice to always come back to, like as we make decisions, as we choose clients and projects we're going to take on, as we interact with each other, as we interact with our clients and the community at large, right? We can always come back. Are we doing this with integrity? Are we doing this because we care about the greater good? Are we doing this and getting it done, right?
Yeah.
But that's what we see in the people that we're bringing on. And you mentioned hiring. I mean, that is, I think, so essential, right? I mean, you have to find the right people for your team in order to make the right culture. And so what we've been doing at Inspirant not exclusively, but for the most part, and when I talk to people when we're interviewing is we like to do this kind of contract to hire
Yes.
approach, right? So, and the reason being, and it's, I think it's to protect both sides. It might seem a little more in benefit of Inspirant, but hopefully both sides find it beneficial. And the analogy I use, again, hashtag new to HR, but I'm like, I'm not going to propose to you after a 30-minute interview, right? Like, I need to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
Let's date a little bit and see if this is mutually beneficial for us. Because to me, this team, this company we're creating is like a family to me. It really is. And so in order to have you become part of our family, let's make sure that we get to know each other and we get along and that we want to do this work together. And, it's more than the work. It is about the person as a whole. So I think that's why hiring is so important. I think why that contract piece is so important as well. Luckily, everyone that we've brought on has really fit it, right? So we're picking the right people at the gate to open the door, and then it's been a really great team. And I love to say that, last year was really our first kind of fully functioning year. So Amir started the company in 2017, Chris V and I came on that year. Chris Goodman came on that year, but that was it in 2017. And we did great. And, obviously things happened and things grew. But 2018 was really a big growing year, as I believe 2019 is for us as well. But all of the contractors we brought on with us last year, 100% of them wanted to stay with us and wanted to continue working on our projects and being part of those teams, which to me feels like we're doing something right. It's a shopper's market right now. I mean, there's lots of opportunities for people, especially as this gig economy is becoming more and more popular. So people are becoming more comfortable with the idea of bringing in contract workers. So our team has a lot of opportunities, and I'm well aware of that. So the fact that they want to stick with us and continue the work that they're doing for Inspirant really feels like a win.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So talking about the gig economy, and I know you wrote an article about that and how, challenges and also opportunities of, kind of piecing together different consultants. And I know in the past, I've been part of, teams that are just kind of, I think you said Frankenstein together with different, different consultants or contract workers. So with a model of hiring contractors first, and then seeing how that fits with the culture and then bringing them in potentially full time. What are the challenges that you found, with that, or the opportunities and how, choosing that path of going with contractors first?
Yeah. Did the word Frankenstein resonate with you?
Oh yeah.
I couldn't think of a better way, but it did kind of feel like this haphazard monster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, I wrote that article because part of when Amir and I were talking about me starting with him on Inspirant and building this company was something I felt very passionately about, was that contractors needed to be treated to the extent of the law, whatever that is, the same as our employees, right? As much as we could treat our contractors. So there was no clear, line between, well, these are our full timers and these are our contractors. I don't want people to know. I want people to be like, oh, I didn't realize so and so is a full timer, right? Like I wanted everyone to feel like they were an own consultant, right? We're all part of the same team, whether you have health benefits or not or whatever, right? So that was, and Amir agreed wholeheartedly, right? Let's treat our people as people. It doesn't matter what your status is. But when I started Colette Allen and I was first starting out, I found that the best way to get work before I started doing B2B was subcontracting through other organizations. So I got to experience firsthand what it felt like to be a random contractor on a project. And if I thought like my entry into Deloitte was not everything I hoped it would be, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, I know.
Being like a random subcontractor on these projects was totally, I was totally unprepared. And look, I'm a grown woman, right? Like I can, figure things out and somewhat smart. So like, sure, right? Like there are expectations. And I think a lot of the mentality is, well, this is how I did it. So like, why can't you figure it out, But for me, again, thinking about culture, thinking about caring about the greater good, like what is the best experience that we can give to our people, regardless if they're full-timers or contractors? Like let's give them some sort of home base, right? A place to call home, a place where they feel comfortable asking questions, a place where we get them up to speed, comfortably, right? So they can hit the ground running and they can be effective. Like, how much time did I spend spinning because I didn't know really, like I just kind of had to jump in and like, okay, what are we doing? What's going on? What are your expectations?
Right. Who are you again?
Who's this client? Who are you? Right? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, just these random calls and like, I don't know. So we wanted to do that differently. We wanted that to be different. So it was based on my own personal experience. Some of the challenges though that we're finding they're great, right? And so, I mean, part of the benefit of hiring these amazing people is that people are not coming in feeling entitled or disappointed if like we missed something. You know, I always say like, we're growing, we're new, like help us out. You know, you have ideas. I loved a couple people, I think you included, gave me feedback on our employee handbook, edits to the employee handbook. And I honestly, Daniel, that gives me such joy that our team feels not only like comfortable enough providing that feedback, but also empowered enough to know that you have an input to the company, right? Like that your voice matters, that you're a contractor, but I saw this thing and I think it could be better and here's my feedback. And we'll be like, thank you, instead of who are you and what, you know? Right. So that's not a challenge. I'd say, honestly, where I've seen the challenges and where some of the feedback we're getting is we've learned that we could still onboard better. So for all that we're doing to try to improve that from the experience that I had, we're implementing even more, right? So we've kind of put together this welcome to Inspirant piece, but now it's on the directors, like welcome to the client, welcome to the project, and you know, providing like kind of a day 1, day 2 on the ground. Here's how you get acclimated quickly. We also have quite a few folks that are contracting for the first time. You know, they're taking a chance with us to go from being full-timers to being 1099s. Like honestly, I'd say at least half, right? So that's a whole new world, you know, like, hey, here's how you 1099 and here's what this means. And it might be slow for a couple of weeks. So you might not be billing your 40 hours. And how do you, you know, take care of that when you're, you know, supporting a family? Like, I mean, there's a lot of conversations around that as well. But again, like feeling so honored that people believe so much in what we're doing that they're willing to take that chance. And I think it's paying off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And maybe we do a slight detour here too, because I wanted to definitely talk about that, because I think becoming an independent consultant is a huge opportunity right now. I think just with technology and just the way the culture is going in the corporate world, there is more acceptance, I think, of contractors. And I think it's more opportunities for people who aren't necessarily happy with, you know, working for the Big Four or anything like that. Maybe the culture is not right, or, you know, and I think everyone has an entrepreneurial spirit inside that, you know, or an itch that they might want to scratch at some point in their career. So I think being an independent consultant is actually a good introduction into starting something on your own. Especially with all, you know, just like Inspirant, having a support system to help you along the way, I think is also very, very helpful for people doing it for the first time. So I did want to talk to you about your experience of going in as a, you know, putting up your shingle, like you said, and starting Colette Allen. So can you talk a little bit about, and you did touch on it, of just kind of the decision process of getting to the point of, okay, I'm going to take the leap, I'm going to do this, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was when I was at Deloitte and I wasn't happy. And it was affecting my life, right? So I was one of those parents that I had to rush through like story time with the kids so I could get back to work. And and then, you know, at a time I was like, this doesn't feel right. You know, I was waking up at 6 so I could get some stuff in before I take the kids to daycare, and then, you know, get them, rush through dinner, rush through story time, bedtime, get them to bed as quickly as possible so I could get back to work, and then work till, you know, 2 a.m. So needless to say, it wasn't very pleasant to be around. So something had to change. And I had gone back to my previous employer, that law firm where I kind of grew up, and asked for my job back, and they'd already filled it. And, you know, they're wonderful. I mean, in the world of not burning bridges, Daniel, 2 of my first clients when I went on my own were my law firm and were Deloitte. Deloitte I subcontracted through another firm, but they brought me right back in because I had the experience and the knowledge. So just FYI, when you're leaving somewhere, don't torch it because they might end up being a client and pay you very well. And my law firm is still a client of Inspirant. So when I joined up with Inspirant, they came with, and we actually are expanding there quite a bit this year. So again, don't bring.
No, I think that's great advice. Anyone who is even considering, I think, becoming an independent consultant, I think you have to look at your career and see if you've burned any bridges, because the first people you go to as an independent consultant is all your former employers and all your former clients and go, hey, I'm ready to do some work. Do you have any opportunities for me? And if anyone has a bad taste in their mouth, they're not going to return your calls. And
they're not, and they might also spread some word too, unfortunately, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's a big world, but it can be a small community. And so if somebody's like, oh, do you know Meg Newhouse? And you burned a bridge, and you're like, oh yeah, you don't want to work with her. And then that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. No, great advice. So I guess getting a little more onto okay, now it's time to do this. And I guess more on the tactical side, did you do an LLC, an S Corp? And actually, how did you come up with the name Colette Allen?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. So again, in the idea of wanting to be bigger than myself, I didn't want it just to be Meg Newhouse. So, but Colette is my middle name and our daughter's middle name, and Allen is my husband and son's middle name. So it is family names.
Oh, okay.
When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be an author, and my pseudonym was going to be Colette Allen. Because my husband and I had been together since I was 13. So at that time, I was going to use his name anyway. So. But we used it for the business.
So much history there.
I know.
I love it.
So tactically, I was pretty clueless. I really was. Through Deloitte, I realized that there were these other learning consultancies that I could subcontract through. So I was like, well, that's probably the best way to go about it. So after I put in my notice at Deloitte, I gave them a month's notice because we had a big project coming up and I wanted to deliver on that, but I also wanted them to know after that project was over, I was out. Yeah. So during that month though, I did reach out to, I didn't have any sort of non-compete. So I reached out to some of those vendor firms and, that had been creating work for Deloitte and said, hey, I'm actually leaving Deloitte. I want to be an instructional designer if you're looking for another contract instructional designer. So I put the word out that way. I did reach out to my network, former employers, my friends. I literally just sent an email. What was challenging though, Daniel, what took me actually I think several years to get down was my elevator pitch and my value prop. I couldn't exactly explain what it is that I was actually going to do and how I could benefit. I was just kind of blah. It was not pretty. And it took me a while. And I even felt awkward talking about what I was trying to do. So again, another piece of advice is the sooner you can kind of hone in on that and practice that and figure out what that is. And maybe that's a career startups advice coming up is how to create your value prop or your elevator pitch, because the sooner you can clearly articulate that, I think the easier it's going to be for you to land some gigs. So tactically, to get work, I put the word out. I looked for networking events. I proactively looked for networking events. I proactively searched on LinkedIn. So I think that I did do a good job of kind of marketing and business development. Where I lacked is setting up financially, I think, really tracking. When you go out on your own, you don't really think about how many different hats you're going to wear for that. Right? You are doing the business development and sales and marketing of yourself.
Yep.
Then you're also doing the delivery of the client
doing
work.
Everything, yeah.
But then also on the back end, right? You've got all this admin stuff. You've got to send invoices and, make sure you get paid on the invoices and file your taxes depending on, how you set yourself up. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Just
I have to say
a quick funny story on the invoices. I remember when I first started, I actually subcontracted to the company I was working with because we had a really good relationship. I actually gave them a 1-year notice. So I was like,
wow.
they were really supportive. So I always owe that to the partners of that firm. But I remember the first 3 months, I didn't know I had to invoice them because I was so used to just getting paid as a full-time employee. So after 3 months, I was like, hey, are you guys going to pay me for this work? And they go, oh yeah, we're absolutely going to do that. And then I remember when the partner's going back and go, hey, did you send any invoices? Because we can't find your invoice. And I go, oh yeah, that's right. I need to invoice you. So I went 3 months without getting paid because I didn't actually bill them. So that's like literally like figuring out how to, start
Way
your
to
own
be
company.
patient about 3 months, though. I feel like after the first month, I'd be like, "Where's my money?"
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, but yeah, that's just like a funny story of like, yeah, you got to do everything and you don't even
All those
know
things to
everything you
think
have to
about.
do. Yeah, from an
You
admin standpoint.
don't. You really don't. Someone should create a course about that.
Yeah.
um, so
Mhm.
I think another piece of advice I have is to find a good accountant.
Yes.
Um, I had one recommended to me actually by my friend who helped to create my office here, right? He has his own architecture firm and he's this guy. And so I was like, cool.
Mm.
So the guy advised me to be an LLC without really knowing our financial situation. Like he's like, oh, you're a small business, you should be an LLC. I was like, okay, fine, whatever you say.
Mm.
And we did that for a year. And another funny story, I could tell you a funny story about, you didn't invoice. I didn't check my accounts receivable. So at the end, I just had money coming into the account. So I was like, cool, I'm getting paid, great. So at the end of the year, my husband, who, side note, is a CPA, right? So like this
That
stuff
helps.
is important to him.
Yeah.
So he's like, so, how do you know you got paid on all your invoices? I was like, well, there's money in the account. He was like, well, I mean, but like, show me your ticking and tying of the payments. And I was like, what do you mean? What does that mean? He's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
So
bookkeeping. Uh-huh.
Sweet Chad went through and reconciled everything. And I had to go back to 2 of my clients who had not paid me all of the money. And this was in December. And I had to go back on invoices from June and like March. So
Oh, wow.
that sucked, right? But also like they owed me the money. So I was kind of like, well, you owe me this money, but I'm just discovering it.
Yeah.
So, lesson learned, right? So have some sort of bookkeeping process in place.
Mm-hmm.
Hire a good attorney or a good accountant. What I was going to say about that was, it turns out LLC was not what we should have done. So after that first year, taxes actually were pretty messy. We're like,
Yeah.
now what? And I went
Mm-hmm.
to Amir and I was like, or maybe we had dinner and I was complaining about it. And he's like, wait, hold on. Who are you using? He's like, use my guy, who I still use to this day and actually is
Okay.
Inspirant accountant as well. His name's Patrick. He's awesome, very smart. And he's like, no. You should be an S Corp and here's why, based on our situation. So
Yeah.
talk to someone who knows what they're doing, because you're going to want to share your whole picture, right? Like not just here's my projected income for this, which your first year doing your own 1099 is probably going to be hard for you to predict. You probably have a number you'd like to hit.
Yeah.
But getting your own business, and it's probably going to be hard, right, to figure out exactly what it is you're going to make. But a good tax accountant will be able to like look at that, look if you have like any sort of, if you have a spouse or significant other's income, secondary income, you own property, et cetera, right? They'll look at the whole picture and be able to tell you what works for you. And then, right, sometimes you have to pay yourself a payroll based on taxes. So maybe like quarterly, you're going to be paying yourself a payroll and paying payroll taxes and paying unemployment and paying Social Security. And then you also have to know what can be business expenses. So if you work from home, you can write off part of your mortgage and you can write off part of, or rent, and you write off part of your utilities and all, right? Like there's a lot that goes into being a 1099 that you should consider and that you should take advantage of being a small business as well.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I'd just say on the note of finding like a right accountant, definitely take the time to do that. Because don't just choose the one that's like the first on Google or whatever, or the first person you talk to. Like actually ask them questions about, hey, do you have any clients that are in my situation, whatever, family wise or financial wise, and what was the advice that you gave them? And are you someone who works with people that are doing startups or independent consulting and all that kind of stuff? Because my experience with accounts as well has not been fantastic. And I definitely had an accountant where it was always a game of 23 questions, right? It's if I didn't ask the right question, I wouldn't get the right answer, or I wouldn't get any guidance whatsoever unless I asked for it. So when things started coming back and I wasn't, paying the right taxes and the state starts coming after you, like with penalty fees. I was like, what's going on? Like, I thought we had this worked out. And they go, oh no, but you didn't tell me you're doing this. I was like, okay. I really
Isn't that
need
your
you to
job?
help, like, guide me
Right.
through this. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's
Yes. Oh, that's great.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
it's not
crazy.
great that happened, but that's great advice that you have that like actual situation,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, especially if you're working in different states too. It's like working in different countries. They have different tax laws, different requirements. I know in New York, I had to pay unemployment insurance in case I fired myself. I can, then get unemployment insurance from the state. In this, it's just like a lot of confusing stuff. So definitely get a good
Well, you
accountant.
put yourself on a performance improvement plan before you actually fired yourself,
Oh yeah,
didn't you?
that's right. You definitely need to do the whole performance plan first because that's a whole legal thing too. Can't fire without cause. But man, this Daniel guy, he's horrible. Got to get rid of him.
Oh,
But
man.
yeah. hmm
Well, yeah, I mean, getting those fees, being a sole proprietor, I mean, that can really hit the bottom line, right? You don't want to have to pay silly fees that, an accounting professional probably should have warned you against.
Right.
So I couldn't agree. Yeah, if anybody, right, like people ask about lawyers, and like, I'd say if you have a lawyer friend or like someone in the family, my brother's a lawyer, so I'm like, oh, could you look at this for me? But like in general, most contracts are pretty standard, right? As far as like when you're subcontracting or, meeting up with your client. You probably want to check with like any sort of homeowners insurance you have. Maybe you can get like a rider for business insurance. It's generally good to have just so
Oh yeah.
if you get sued, they don't sue you, they sue your business, right? So some stuff like that. I know we're going down this rabbit hole. Sorry, I don't know if this is where you wanted to go.
No, this is good though. This is like really
Think about,
tactical stuff. I mean, I honestly
yeah,
think a lot of people who haven't done it or thinking about it, this is actually very, very helpful.
yeah.
They can learn from our mistakes and not do
Right.
it.
I mean, that's the whole point of it. Yeah, please do. I want you to do better than me. I do, honestly.
So I mean, I think for a lot of people, moving away from like all the tactical stuff, but more like, I guess, philosophical, what were your biggest fears of taking that leap? Or were there any? Were you just gung ho and like, I'm ready to go?
Yeah, so I have a really high risk profile. And I have very high intuition, right? So I go with my gut,
Mm.
which I'm married to a very logical, fact-based human being. So I know that not everybody goes with their gut. And so I've been fortunate though that my intuition has served me well, both in life and in my career. And, without getting too flaky about it, I use it in hiring. I get a gut feeling about people, and it's paid off. So my gut feel for going out on my own was very strong, and I knew it would be successful.
Mm-hmm.
My concern, the only concern I had was making as much money as I was making when I was working for, full time.
Yeah.
Because our family relied on that income, right? So I had 3 people that I lived with that were counting on, mom bringing home what she was bringing home, or our life was going to have to change. And I didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to have them have to make changes because of a choice I had made.
Did you give yourself Did you give yourself a runway? Sorry.
No, that's it. Yeah, I did. My husband did.
Oh, okay. Good to be married too.
We gave. Right. Well, now it's funny. He jokes now. So at the time, he said 6 months. I had a 6-month runway. But at the time, I was like, you probably had closer to 18 months. But I wanted to make sure that you were hitting it. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I was very fortunate, right? I had a supportive spouse who also had an income that we could rely on, and insurance and all that. So I know that not everybody has a secondary income. So a lot of people are on their own going out on their own, or they're the sole breadwinner. So I'd say be very planful in making the leap. Don't make the leap out of emotion. Make sure that you've done your research about what it is that you're going to do, and that you've started making tracks. Like we talk about a side gig, right? Like I think the idea of a side gig is really popular now, especially in millennial generation and now Gen Z. I just read an article about how half of Gen Z want to be entrepreneurs, which I think is phenomenal. I'm also like, who's going to work at the companies that are already established, but we'll see how this plays out, right? But, I think that we need to be, I think that organizations that are not tuning into the fact that people probably have side gigs going on are sticking their head in the sand and not being prepared for what's next. So I think the best thing to do is to embrace what those side gigs are, right? So you have like a real conversation with somebody that I want you to give 100% here. This is your job. This is what I'm paying you to do. But I also know that you want to eventually one day start your own coffee shop. So I'm going to support you with that. What is it that you need to do to be successful in doing that? And if you give me everything you can while you're here doing this job for me, I will do the best I can to support you then in this next thing that you're looking to do. I think that's the best approach to have as we move forward in this gig economy,
that's exactly
right?
how Inspirant operates too, which is very different than I think for most companies. Of, hey, I remember on the all hands, you guys were all talking. You were talking about, hey, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Let us know so we can help you with that. I mean, part of this podcast right now is you guys helping me with, building some content and all that kind of stuff, and me sharing, what my dreams are with career startups. And it just rolls right in with, I think, the culture that you're putting together, especially with all the contractors that you're melding into your family, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense to me, right? You can pretend it's not happening, but it's still happening. So you might as well embrace it. Embrace it and make it beneficial, right? And I think I completely agree, right? We had that conversation last week, and I so appreciate you finding the mutually beneficial pieces, because that's what it's all about. How can we help each other to do better?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, getting close to the hour, this podcast, definitely a lot of listeners are college students or college graduates, just getting into the workforce. Do you have any advice for people? Well, let's start with, before we get to the general advice, let's start with someone who wants to become an independent consultant sometime down the road. They've heard what we've talked about. They've seen us and seen, I guess our lifestyle or whatever, and they want that for themselves. Would you give advice of, hey, maybe go work for a Deloitte first for a while? Because from my own opinion, I don't think you could be an independent consultant coming right out of college, because you don't really have any expertise. But you might have a different opinion. But what would be your advice first on, like, how do you get to that point in your career?
I do agree with you. I mean, specifically with consulting, I think there are many other fields where you could leave college and start your own gig, right? I mean, if you're an artist, an architect, I think experience is, and I'm sure it's so hard for people in college or just getting out of college to hear, experience really is very helpful in success. You learn things as you go. You've learned things, through your education, but actually getting out and tactically applying that knowledge will help you in your career. Consulting, I think specifically, I really do think if you can land a Big Four job, I think you will learn so much. I do, or any of the bigger consulting firms. I think you'll learn so much about client service, about you're going to work with all these really smart people and learn from them, not only your peers, but the managers and the partners that you work with as well, and just like soak up as much of that as you possibly can while you're there. Learn that good work ethic, learn how to interact with clients and how to really provide that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. If you're fortunate enough to work for one of those great consultancies, I'd say go for it. And give it a handful of years, right? And then, but while you're doing that, if you really have that passion for doing something on your own, foster that. And to the extent that you can, talk to the people you're working with about it, because they might support you, right? If you have this really great idea, I think of Josh Burson. I don't think Josh Burson works for Deloitte. I'm not sure. But anyway, Josh Burson has this thing called Burson by Deloitte, and he's this like HR incubator. So like he's this guy that now has Deloitte like sponsoring his dream, basically, right? Like, so I mean, you just never know where you might be able to go. So I would say get that experience, but don't be afraid to, keep fanning the flame of what it is that, you're really passionate about doing.
Very cool. So how about general advice? Just anything that what would you tell your 23-year-old self coming out of college that's just getting into it?
So this is gonna again get a little crunchy on you, but I mean it's take the time to get to know yourself. Put down your phone. Stop chasing the weekends. Stop hanging out with people that aren't good for you, right? Like, get to know yourself, all the good and all the bad, and dust off those corners and come to terms with stuff that you might not like about yourself, and it is who you are. The sooner that you can really accept yourself fully for who it is that you are, the sooner you're going to find really happiness and contentment, and you're going to be a good human being, right? Because I believe that people who like who they are and are happy with who they are, they don't want to be mean to other people because they're content, right? They're happy with themselves. So that will help you, I think, as you move through. So you might be able to do that work on your own. You might need, the help of a professional, whatever it is, like figure yourself out. And then I think you're really going to have a very happy and rewarding life.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to close out the podcast. So thank you, Meighan. I really appreciate it.
It was fun talking to you.
We'll do it again.
Thanks, Daniel. Cool.
All right.